Beep, 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 beep. All that's new and approved from the Jester. Hello. Right, okay. Somebody's contacted me, bless them, and said, stop it with the beep beeps. It detracts from your message. I can't make up my mind. Some people have said, stop doing the beep beeps. It drives us mad. Other people have said, loving the beep beeps. Beep beep. Perhaps I'll just, do a poll. Yep. And find out whether or not it's actually something worth keeping. Welcome. Right. First things first. There's a Patreon that goes with today's, with an essay. Right. Okay. Join my Patreon if you can. Buy me a coffee. The usual. And also, you'll find some of this stuff now on SoundCloud. Started putting it out as a podcast as well as this. Now, become a warrior teacher. Come on, come and join us. The team's having a great time right now. There's loads going on. And just so that you know, there's some annoying bastard builders outside who are doing nothing but making noise and putting up scaffolding. It's been happening for weeks. It's driving me around the bend. So I had to wander over this morning and said, do you mind? The Jester's filming. Can you kindly stop for an hour? And they smiled and looked at me kindly and said, bugger off, fatty. They were a lot bigger than I was, so I thought I wouldn't push it. Right, so what you'll see in the linkage down below in the old descriptions, yeah, right, in the doobras, is a link to a tweet by Calvin Robinson. Calvin, now if you haven't met Calvin, is on GB News. Tall fellow, a statuesque, very charismatic. He's not just tall, he's tall! He's that kind of tall, Giant. Right, okay. I've got loads of time for him. I'm going to see him, actually, in a week or two. He's coming up. And we're going to go and see him speak, which would be rather good. He's doing a video on GB News today about what's commonly known as the Great Reset. Now, for those of you that are not in the know in regard to the Great Reset has one simple mantra, right? You will all be happy and you will all own nothing and you will all be happy. That's its mantra, right? So what Calvin's saying is, look, this sounds like a damn conspiracy, right? It does, but all I'm going to do is read what these people are saying. So he's not making up a conspiracy himself. He's reading what people are saying. Go and have a listen to that, if you haven't already, and then come back. Hit pause, right? Go and have a listen to that and come back. Or not, please yourself. But what he's done, essentially, is laid out clearly what looks to be a very strange conspiracy. And some of the things they're saying are a bit worrying, right? World Health Organization, World Economic Forum, it's all this sort of idea of a cabal of global conspiracists. I'm not a huge fan at all. I think, Hanlon's razor applies in most cases, and that you don't ascribe to wickedness that which you ascribe to stupidity, and some of my regular viewers and Jesterites will be well aware of what that means. So the worrying thing is that if he is right, even if he is right, that you will own nothing and be happy, the way that they're doing this and the way that it's going to happen is so incremental that you won't know about it until the bullet hits you in the back of the neck. That's the problem, right? You're not going to know about it until the bullet hits you in the back of the neck, if any of this is true, because we know where this stuff takes us. Because what you have to understand is that the Great Reset, that idea, you will own nothing and you will be happy, is equity. Equality of outcome. Think Pol Pot, Mao. Think millions dead. Okay, that's what it is. That's what they're talking about, equality of outcome. Now, there's hints of it. You can see it in society and what's going on in our everyday life, the little nudges and moves towards being a certain way, in a profoundly behaviourist and nudging way. We know this is going on. We can see it in schools and universities and everything else. But I think what's interesting about this is that what we're doing is seeing a sort of stark difference between a society that likes the liberating idea of equality of opportunity, let's make an environment where everyone can thrive, and we seem to be heading in a rapid rate of knots to a sort of stultifying totalitarian idea of equality of outcome, which of course must and always is enforced. It has to be. So this own nothing, be happy tenet is, do you remember those of you that watch Star Trek, the latter end of Star Trek, with Jean-Luc Picnose and all that lot, and, the Marvellous Janeway. Yep, you've seen it with Star Trek. Yep. Star Trek is a communist utopia, right? Can't get away from it. They're all happy and they own nothing. Except the odd thing they pick up from races when being in a capitalist society is convenient to the plot. Right? Okay. This is Star Trek incarnate. I love it, but it's just Star Trek incarnate. Right? And the trouble with all this business about you will own nothing and be happy is they've got one huge problem in their vast global conspiracy, according to what we've seen. I'm not a big fan, right? Is that they haven't got what Star Trek's got. And Star Trek's got one thing they haven't got. Right, and this is what makes all the difference in the world. It will scupper it in the end, but people will die. In the meantime, they haven't got what they call the replicators. Now, do you remember the replicators? Star Trek, Picard would get snitty with the other bloke who runs the ship. What's his name? Riker, yeah, right? Or Data would say something logical and piss him off. And he'd go, I'll be in my ready room. And he'd pop into his ready room and the door would go swish, swish. And then he'd go, Earl Grey, hot. And all of a sudden, there'd be a cup of tea. It just came out this hole in the wall, right? Okay, or, cerulean brandy, and there it is. Or whatever it was they wanted, Fantastic if that existed, wouldn't it? It's not, it doesn't, never going to. Utopia, here we come. Imagine if I had that, I'd be in terrible trouble. Lobster, thermidor, broccoli, and sauteed potatoes. Thank you. Could I have the finest cassoulet from the Dordogne? And it would appear, big bowls of it. You could just 4 foot of Claire. It seems that you can only do it with things. What if you could do it with people? Ben Whishaw, please. I mean, it's a great idea, but it's nonsense of the first order. Absolute nonsense of the first order. But this is, you will own nothing, you'll be happy. But where are they going to get everything from? Right? What are we going to work for if we own nothing? Why would you get up? It'll be the quest for human knowledge. Right, okay. God knows where they're going with this. But it's strange that we've got something that... We've got an anomaly in our society, a sort of socialist utopian state. It's not utopian, but it's certainly a socialist state within our state. And that's called the NHS, which costs us some £176 billion a year. Now, I can't even get my head around that bloody number, but I'm sure you can't either. But its sole purpose is to practice equity, equality of outcome, to make you well. And on the whole, it does it brilliantly. I should know. I've been the recipient of more of their services in the last 18 months than I ever have in my life. And they are fantastic people. Right? So I go in, I'm unwell, I come out, and I'm less unwell than I was. I'm less unwell than I was because despite the fact that they do equality of outcome, they're stuck with the one reality of life, which is death. So they can make me as well as they possibly can, and the carcass is still falling to pieces. I get up in the morning, it's not what am I going to do, it's what's going to drop off. Or stop working. But that's what it is, it's equality of outcome. It's a socialist state in that respect. But, and here's the fascinating thing, just enough to blow the mind, is that it does so through offering equality of opportunity, which is the opportunity for every individual to be looked after in a very specific way with the individual as sovereign. Right, with the individual as sovereign. So your individual goes in, I've got, something wrong with my chest or my ear or whatever it may be. The specificity of the care is absolutely for you. Absolutely for you. Everybody has the opportunity to get well. They're still stuck with the other bit, which is, it's equity. You will get well, right? Now, that's great. That's how it should be. That's what socialised medicine is all about. And it means that when we need it, we can get it, right? Not all the time. It's like any behemoth organisation that's nearly 100 years old. It has its problems, but everything does. But you imagine for 1 minute if we picked that up and said, right, we're going to use this template for the rest of the world. The socialist utopia dream for the rest of the world. I mean, that's an extraordinary idea. It really is. What would happen then? Earl Grey hot? Anyone? Yep, Earl Grey hot. What would happen then? This is the kind of utopian socialist dream that the Great Reset seems to be about, is this idea that equality of outcome can be achieved. It can't. Equality of outcome is murderous. It's murderous unless confined to one single goal. And the single goal is make people well. But it won't be confined to that. Hang on a minute. He's got more corn than he has. Let's get the corn off him and give it to him. We've seen this all before, right? Equality of outcome, not equality of opportunity. And it's incredibly dangerous. But that's where you can really start to worry, because actually when it comes to equality of outcome and doing it through a kind of ridiculous liberal individualism, which is what we're seeing a mix of, is that you end up with a situation whereby we begin to recognise unreality as reality. So I'm then given pause to stop and think that currently in medical schools they're teaching nonsense. They're teaching nonsense and unreality. That in our education system we are teaching nonsense, unreality, and full-blown narcissistic, self-identified, faux individual identity to children. To children, right? It's the strangest situation. The law does it, education's doing it, everybody's doing it. And at the same time that we're doing that, we're pathologizing everyday life. Oh, it's problematic. Have some mindfulness. How is your well-being? Oh, is your mental health up to scratch? You've been upset. Oh, that's up to the trauma. We are pathologizing everyday life. And we're doing it in the guise of well-being and mindfulness. And we're weakening the next generation. Trigger warnings, safe spaces, censorship, categorization, controlling their wellness, as you call it, along multiple dimensions. What they eat, how long they should sleep, how much they should walk, what they should think, what they should read, what they shouldn't read. And at the same time, we're providing them with the ability to define a fake identity masquerading as freedom. But it's not. It's a fake identity that is designed to obscure the actuality that little bit by bit we're being boxed in, bit by bit, day by day, nudge by nudge. There may not be a great reset. There may not. They may want to do it, but I imagine the incompetence of the human creatures will mean it never will happen. But on the ground level, where we should be fighting, it is happening. Bit by bit, nudge by nudge. It's the ever-present grasping hands of the toxic parent. Don't eat this, don't do that. Believe this, don't believe that. We'll tell you what reality is. When you're in my house, you will do as you're told. This is a collective idea, a template that puts our humanity together as a collective and unwell body and mind, constantly in need of fixing and nudging in a behaviorist game that never ends. We're a sickness that must be healed of old wounds and wiped of human imperfections. We're, especially the inconvenient ones. You know, like the tendency to want to be with people like us. That's called homophily, by the way. Birds of a feather will flock together. Or maybe to utter words that many would rather we did not, to speak and to think freely and therefore be able to speak and discuss the unthinkable. Or God forbid that we should start to exclude people because they are in need of exclusion. And yes, maybe in need of shame. So we can all believe that the Great Reset is a thing, or we cannot, but in the end it doesn't matter because it's little slices of daily encroachment that drives this bizarre state of affairs, an end of the cash society. Think about that one. The fact that you've got Netflix now instead of owning Blu-rays or DVDs, and therefore there will put up a collective that you can watch and not the ones you may want to. The gradual disappearance of what it was that they would want you to see from a media perspective, perhaps they're going to remove that. What next? They're already been removing To Kill a Mockingbird, 1984, and all sorts of books have already gone from curriculums. It's a bizarre state of affairs. And when we go back to my original analogy of you won't know it's happening until the bullet hits the back of your neck, we have to understand that even in my hyperbolic conspiratorial mind, that each of us will either become the one holding the gun or the one at the end of the barrel. And the only difference between the two is likely to be courage against authoritarianism in all its forms. And my advice is that we find that courage sooner rather than later. Because the gun doesn't suddenly appear, and kneeling before it does not spontaneously happen. No, for that to happen we require little nudges which drive us inexorably to the point where our atrophied minds, devoid of critical thought, shorn of independence of conscience and boxed in by mantras and tenets, finally grasp the horrifying and startling realization that we are so far down the road that not to do the unthinkable becomes unthinkable. And at that point, folks, we'll all pull the trigger.